So Dr. Clark here again, same site, a little while later. I've just spent about 20 minutes or so dragging along this same property, and you might be able to see there's quite a few ticks in this vial now. I'm getting more and more all the time, and they're pretty abundant. The conditions are not really ideal. It's fairly hot and dry right now. The humidity is quite low. Ticks often don't move around too much when the conditions are dry like this and the humidity is lower. As it starts to cool off a little later in the day and the humidity gets higher, they'll become more active. Some of that's related to species. Different tick species are more or less tolerant of certain conditions. Now, I said on an earlier segment, one of the reasons I'm so interested in this particular site up here in Georgia is that I was contacted by a resident who herself had had Lyme disease and knew several people in her neighborhood who had Lyme disease or some evidence of possible Lyme disease, including antibody test results that indicated it or that were positive by all criteria, the strictest criteria for having Lyme disease. And she knew that there was a lot of tick bites here, so I decided to come up here and see what was going on, and certainly I believe what she was telling me about all the ticks in here, and nothing made a believer out of me more than the fact that I actually came down with symptoms right after within 5 days of the year 2010, the first year I collected here, and had several tick bites. None of the ticks were attached to me for more than probably 24 to 36 hours, and 5 days later I was having swollen lymph nodes and flu-like symptoms and so on, and was treated for 2 weeks with doxycycline and felt fine for several months, and then developed chronic fatigue, chronic headache, pressure in my head and sinuses, that sort of thing, and began doing my own DNA testing for Lyme disease because that's what I do in my laboratory. And I did find DNA evidence that I had both Lyme and babesiosis, and did several months of treatment after that in January of 2011, and all my symptoms went away and I felt good again, and then relapsed again in November of 2011. Tested myself again in November and December, and also tested positive by PCR for Lyme disease and babesiosis again. So not only do we definitely have Lyme disease in the southern United States, because I've never been bitten by a tick anywhere outside the southern United States, so there's always the possibility that I picked up the infection somewhere else prior to that and just didn't have symptoms until those later tick bites, but nevertheless it still proves that there's Lyme disease in the South, because I've never been bitten by a tick anywhere other than the southern United States, except for one tick bite that I had in Colorado on a fly fishing trip, and from what I hear, Colorado's not supposed to be endemic for Lyme disease either. So besides some American dog tick bites as a child in Kentucky, the only other tick bites I've had were in the states of South Carolina, Mississippi, and Florida and Georgia. So that's part of my story, and there's a lot more details to it, and I'm going to keep investigating this area and seeing what I can find here. And so far on this trip, all I'm finding are Lone Star ticks. That's pretty much what I expected to find. That's what's mostly here, and that's what's mostly biting people. So we try to put our evidence together, the little pieces of evidence that we can get, and try to make sense of them. And all the evidence that we have so far indicates that there are many people in this area who have signs and symptoms of a tick-borne disease following tick bites, which are primarily Lone Star tick bites. Some of the patients have some antibody evidence for Lyme infection. Some test fully positive according to the strictest criteria. Some have tested positive on my own PCR testing, including myself, including someone who lives at the residence where I'm collecting right now. And you put this stuff together, and we found Lyme Borrelia DNA in Lone Star ticks here, as well as Babesia microti, DNA in the Lone Star tick. So you begin to put these things together, and you just want to make sense of it and think about it logically and scientifically. And so all the evidence right now points to the potential that they have Lyme disease here, and they have other tick-borne infections here, and Lone Star ticks appear to be the primary culprit. So we're working on gathering more evidence, try to get this stuff published. The whole motivation is not to try to prove some preconceived hypothesis. The motivation is to seek the truth and find out what's really happening here. So that's what we want to do, and we're doing the best that we can to do that with very limited funding and not any funding from any federal agencies or even state agencies, from private donations from people out there who are interested and want to support the work. So I hope you're enjoying some of this stuff and maybe picking up a little bit of information. And by the way, anybody who wants to contact me, wants to get some more information, you can contact me at kclark@unf.edu. That's KCLARK at unf.edu. Or you can give me a call there. You can look me up on the web and give me a call there at my office at the University of North Florida. And I'll do my best to get back to you and try to give you some information. Thanks a lot. Talk to you again on another segment.